Hi everyone, welcome to today's event. We welcome Brynn Metheney, who specializes in creature design, animal autonomy, and visual development for film, games, and publishing. I'd also like to thank the Milanese Family Gift Fund, David Wagner, Susan Lewis, and Peter Kuo for playing a big part in making this event happen. And thank you, Brynn, for being here. I'm sure we're all very excited.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Okay, let me stop sharing.
You forgot to introduce yourself, Ida.
Oh, hi, I'm Vida. I'm the Art and Design Club president.
Yay.
Yay. All right. Okay, let me go ahead and share my screen. One moment. Okay. Can everybody see that okay? Cool. All right. Hi, everyone. As you know, my name is Brynn Metheney, and I am a concept artist and illustrator who works in the entertainment industry. I work for a number of different clients and types of media. I work in film, games, publishing, even virtual reality. I've worked for companies like Warner Brothers, Sony, Wizards of the Coast. They always escape me as I go through them. EuropaCorp, HBO, all the studios, and I specialize in creature design and animal anatomy, as well as world building. So the type of work that I typically do has to do with fantasy creatures or sci-fi creatures, aliens, monsters, that sort of thing, and making them feel like something that could plausibly exist, or maybe does exist on a distant planet or in hell or somewhere. So lots of different kinds of things. The kind of work that interests me in creature design is something that feels like it belongs in a place. So I'm really interested in evolution and adaptability, as well as environment building and world building and that sort of thing. So I'm going to take you through my career, because I feel that that's probably the most interesting thing for students to actually see, is sort of like where I was as a student and what I did as a fresh graduate, and sort of the jobs that got me to where I am today. And I'll also talk a little bit about my process and how I approach my own philosophies of creature design and world building and that sort of thing, just to kind of give you all hopefully some inspiration if this is something that you're interested in or want to know more about. Maybe this will inspire you to do some of that. So yeah, so let's get started on maybe where I started as a kid. It's always like kind of weird to be like, when I was a kid, but that's where we're at. So as a kid, I was super into Disney cartoons. I think, like, I don't know, I was a big, and still am actually, a huge animation geek. I love working in animation and really appreciate the medium. And of course, I was fed a steady diet of Disney cartoons as a kid. So I grew up a lot drawing all these sorts of animal characters and stuff while I was young and in school. I didn't actually really get into like art until like later, but this was sort of what I was tracing and drawing as a child and what really inspired me. Of course, I was also very interested in monsters and movies and that sort of thing, particularly Jurassic Park and Star Wars were two big movies in my childhood that really inspired me. I saw these movies way too young. And Alien and like Predator and all these other sci-fi movies that you're not supposed to see when you're like 8 years old. So that was, the kind of basis for the inspiration that went on to make me really interested in monsters. Ralph Macquarie was one particular artist that worked in the original trilogy for Star Wars that I think his work had a lot of influence on who I am today. Stan Winston Studios and their work on Alien was also in particular a very big inspiration. Freshman career is a really awesome concept artist that I looked at quite a bit through college, especially, and still do. I still admire his work immensely. It's beautiful and very technically advanced. And I loved his work on Jurassic Park because I felt that it was, oh great, my internet connection's a little unstable, sorry about that. Hopefully everything's okay though. Sorry, but his work on Jurassic Park was just incredible, and some of the best dinosaur work that I think I've seen on a film. And of course the puppetry behind all that and Stan Winston and what they did for it was amazing. So seeing all this as a kid was like super inspiring for me, and I knew that I wanted to be involved in it somehow, but at the time, there wasn't really like a college or like a program or any sort of online class even that you could take to kind of get here. Being a concept artist was sort of this like I don't know, like phantom career that like no one knew about. You know, it was sort of like this like, what is that even? I think when I went to college and I told them I wanted to be a concept artist, they were like, what is that? I don't know what that is. And so it was sort of a kind of a guessing game as to what I needed to pursue. So I went to get an illustration degree because I knew that if I could at least make a pretty picture and something that could communicate effectively, then I could get further with like my concept work. I knew how to draw animals and I knew how to like design creatures the way I wanted to, and I just needed more time and practice for that, but I needed someone to like teach me how to make a good image. So I went to CCA and really just did some of the craziest work. My work was very weird. In school, it didn't make any sense. I was just trying to figure it out, and like I'm like showing this image because it's so random and nobody knows what's going on. But it's like, and I put my giant copyright on the top, like like someone's gonna steal this. I better put a copyright on it. And I was just making work to try to figure out like what it is I wanted to get my illustration work to look at. Because at the time I was also not just interested in being a concept artist, but also being an illustrator for books and all kinds of things. I just wanted to do everything. So in classes, I was making these like kind of weird editorial type illustrations to sort of go along with magazines or movie posters or whatever the prompt was from the teacher. But in my sketchbook, I was kind of making all these weird little animals with worlds and, you know, kind of stories and biological notes and stuff like that while I was, you know, kind of in secret, just because this kind of work wasn't really what I was there to learn. And there was this moment in my college journey where, and it's actually, it was in everybody's college journey at CCA, where you have something called a junior review. And it's where they basically look at all the work you've made up into you being a junior, and are kind of like, you know, here's what we think, and this is where you're at and where you should go, and you know what you need to work on and all that. It's kind of like a big check-in. So at my junior review, I had work that looked just like this on like one row, and then I had a whole other row of all these like creature sketches and drawings and notes and all kinds of stuff. And my teachers looked at me and they were basically like, you need to do this creature stuff. We don't know what any of this is, but you got to stick to that because that's actually like really good. And, you know, it looks like you were really passionate about it. So we think you should just go for it. And that was a really affirming moment for me because I kind of had always dreamed about doing this, but I was feeling a little bit insecure in it. So it was nice to have that affirmation there. And I'll never forget it. It was very important to me. So yeah, anyway, so I did that. And from then on through school, I really made sure that I was working on lots of different creatures. So these are some of my student creature drawings, just trying to figure it out. I was also really interested in learning how to be a digital painter, and digital painting was not something that was like taught when I was in school 12 years ago, which is alarming because it should have been, but our school hadn't caught up to it yet. So it was like, oh, we got to learn Photoshop on our own, which was exciting and terrifying all at once, but we figured it out. And yeah, so in my senior thesis, which is like this kind of end of your journey class, we get to like make a project, and it's sort of a body of work that is representative of what it is you want to do, like as a, you know, as an illustrator, or what you're interested in. Because like when you graduate school, sometimes it's like you don't know, and that's totally fine also. It was more just like a class where you could explore ideas and make a body of work that you were going to come out with as your portfolio. So I was like, great, I'm going to make an ecosystem that exists along a river, and I'm going to populate it with animals that live alongside that river, and that's going to be my project. And I'm going to kind of update it like a weird wildlife guide. So I started drawing the creatures for that, and I was definitely looking at Crash Macquarie quite a bit for this. All of these animals are in pencil, and I was very adamant about them like being like very scientific, technical looking, while also learning how to, you know, do more Photoshop painting, which was proving to be pretty challenging for me at the time. I also designed a lot of plants, and I did a few environmental studies and whatnot to kind of help build this place and to sort of talk about it like it was a real place where these animals lived, and I was taking like biological notes on them. It's not the most original format for a project, like field guides exist all over the place, but it was a good way for me to showcase the fact that I could build worlds and come up with stories and show something that looked convincing enough to pitch to a director. So I made this blog back when blogs were a thing, and called it the Moray River. And it's this, it's really like fun to look back on it now. It's actually not up anymore, sadly. But I like kind of, was classified each animal sort of according to the Linnaean, taxonomy and that kind of thing, as it gets a little convoluted at the end there. But and I would include like a scale to a human, and would have like a region on the map where these creatures lived, and I would update the blog like once every couple weeks with a new species, and I would try to push it to like every sort of outlet I could, any kind of art outlet or Tumblr at the time, or other art blogs and whatnot, to try to get them to like reblog it and write articles about it and that kind of thing. It ended up on websites like IO9 and Reddit and stuff like that. So that's where it kind of like took off and was seen by a lot of people, which ultimately helped me. So I showed this project for talks because it was the launch pad for my entire career, and it really kind of helped me gain a foothold in, not just the industry, but also in the creature community. It was a good way for other creature artists to kind of get an idea of what I was about, and to sort of see me as a peer, and to recommend my work, later if they had something that they felt would fit, and so on and so forth. So that is totally how I've gotten jobs. So it was a good way to do that. So having a body of work, I think, that's consistent, that has, it doesn't necessarily have to be a world that you made, but something that shows like, an interest. It doesn't even have to have like a style, but just something that shows like, oh, I'm really interested in, cars, or I really like mechs, or I really like, whatever it is you like. And showing a lot of that is a good way to get people to be like, oh, okay, that person's really into this, I should hire them for that sort of thing. So so this was my very, very first job that I got. It was for Wired Magazine, which I was really stoked about. I was recommended by an instructor, or they had sent my work because he had gotten a job, and he was a really prolific animal artist, and he's actually sadly passed away, but he was amazing. And they had wanted to hire him. He was feeling ill, so he recommended me, and I got the gig. And what was kind of nice about this job was that they looked directly back at my Moray River project, and they were like, can you do what you did with the Moray River, but to these like weird, like future animals that we're going to pretend exist in Florida, where there's like a saber-tooth rat and like a shiny armadillo or something. They were supposed to be like future animals that were like adapted to survive with like, humans and climate change and stuff. So we did a couple different ones, but it was a nice, again, this like kind of affirmation where I was like, okay, cool. People are seeing the work that I'm doing, and they're making the jump and wanting me to make that same kind of work for them, for the job. So that's a really nice like thing to be happening. So that was something that I noted, where it was like, okay, if you put something in your portfolio, online, people are probably going to hire you for it. So make sure it's what you want to put up there. So so that was one job I got. Then from there, this is kind of how I got into the industry and what I do today, through a number of different avenues, because it wasn't just one thing, and it was like a lot of things. And some things were like, yeah, that makes sense, and other things were like, that'll never happen again. Okay, so one way that I got into doing what I do is I submitted my work to a magazine called Imagine Effects Magazine, and they have like an artist submission like page, or I guess like article that you can submit to once a month. And I don't know if they still do it, but they will send you you send them work, and then they like will publish it and show it around the world in their magazine. They'll print it and whatnot. And so I did that. They liked it a lot, and they approached me about being a Q&A artist, which meant that they would pay me to answer reader questions and illustrate them for the magazine. So I'd get like 2 to 4 questions a month, and illustrate them for the magazine and write an article about whatever the readers were asking. And I would ask always for the creature questions. So for a year, I illustrated creature questions for Imagine FX magazine, and it was a pretty sweet gig. And it was nice because it got my work in front of a lot of art directors. A lot of art directors were looking at this magazine at the time. So that was a great inside like way to get into that world. This is like some old work from that magazine. The second thing that happened to me was I got to work on the film Valerian, and like being approached by a director just out of the blue doesn't happen. That's not something that like I can say is like a reliable way to get a job, but that's one thing that happened to me, and I got very lucky in that instance. And it was because I think one of his assistants had seen the Moray River on a blog somewhere on IO9 or something, and they forwarded it to Luke. Luke liked it and was like, yeah, let's hire her to do some aliens for Valerian. So that was how I got that gig. And that was, honestly, I wish I would have gotten that gig a little later because I just did not feel ready at the time. I was like, well, I graduated in 2009, it was 2011. So it was like 2 years after I graduated, and it was exciting and I loved it, but man, I was really scared. So yeah, that was a cool project to be on. But that was a really crazy thing to like start with. So it's kind of weird to include it because I feel like it doesn't really happen. But anyway, I went on to design a lot of non-humanoid aliens to try to get like some weird looking stuff in that movie. None of it's in the movie, but it was a really great pre-production that I was on, because Luke was basically like, just design whatever you want to design. We just need to sell the script because right now we're still working on it and like we don't even know if this movie's going to happen. So just make what you want to make, and like we're going to use it to pitch it to studios. So it was really cool to be on that end of it, because I got to just kind of make whatever and write a bunch of stuff and do all kinds of crazy stuff, and then they just used it in the pitch. So that was really cool. The other stuff that I worked on has nothing to do with what I do now, but I really like to show this work because I feel that if any of you are looking to get into games or film or any of this, it's really good to take, especially as you are just graduating, it's really good to take jobs that'll give you experience that might be outside of the subject matter that you're interested in. And for me, that was taking on a job called retail therapy, in which I illustrated clothes for like a paper doll kind of avatar that you would like dress up and stuff. And it was a really great job because it paid me like consistently. I had a stable paycheck, and I really learned how to paint digitally because I really had to. Like I was good enough to get like squeak through the test and be fine there. But I definitely needed some more time to like figure out how to use a clipping mask and all of these things that are like, probably you guys are like, wow, that's super basic stuff. But at the time I had no idea like how to do any of that. So I was learning all that on the job and just kind of guessing as I went along. And then also the working with an art director, taking notes, applying those notes, filling out a time card, all of that kind of like job related stuff was really great to learn with this job, because it was kind of the job that was going to do that for me. That said, I never actually showed anyone any of this work. Like no one has ever seen this work except for talks like this, because I didn't want anyone to hire me for this. I wanted to keep doing this for the companies that I would like apply to, and I would send them this work and be like, yeah, I can do that. But I didn't want to put it online and be known as like the fashion clothing person, because I wanted to be a creature designer. So that's what I kept online, and that's what I said I was until the very end. Are there, I keep seeing this like chat thing pop up. Are there questions, or I'm not sure if that's what that is, but I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. So if there are, let me know.
Reminiscing about paper dolls is all.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Awesome. Great. Okay, cool. But yeah, so other than that, yeah, so that was a really fun job. And I also worked on Mafia Wars, which is so random and weird. And this job was actually super freaking hard because like they were so particular about how everything looked, and you would get like a photo, and you manipulate it into this crazy illustration, and these people were so good at it, and I was very like, oh, I don't know. And I did a few characters that I think actually went into the game as is, and then there was definitely some ones that like I would turn in, and the lead artist would kind of adjust a bit because he was very good. So, but that was a really great learning experience. Again, just to kind of also like learning how to let go of your work and let a team completely take it. Which at the time when I was a young artist, I kind of didn't know what that felt like, and I was so used to kind of keeping my work safe and nobody would touch it, and then giving it to a whole team to kind of rip it apart and like paint all over it and do all this crazy stuff. Was kind of scary at first, but then after going through these jobs, I was like, oh yeah, well that's super. That doesn't hurt at all. It's great. So I actually really like it better now, and I'm learning a lot. So it's really nice. So it was good experience for that. So I like to show those three things because it was like kind of a good example of like, I reached out to a magazine and I got that gig, and that was one avenue I got jobs from. Luc Besson found me. That doesn't happen, but sometimes it can. So put your work everywhere you can, because you never know who might see it. And stuff like this where it's like I might not really advertise that I do this job, but it's one of the jobs that paid the bills to get me through the first few months of being a new graduate, which is pretty rough. So anyway, so
Who's
from
this
then
guy?
on, I've gone on to, sorry, this
Who's
guy? I
this?
don't actually know his name. I have no idea what his name is or what character he is, but I painted him. So but from then on, I went on to work on a lot of different projects for a lot of different companies. Some of my favorite projects were Sorry to Bother You, Men in Black, of course, Valerian, because it happened. Ghostbusters was a recent one that I was pretty much the lead principal artist on. So I did almost everything that you see in that movie, which I'm really excited for it to finally release this year. I think in November it's going to release. So that'll be really cool. And there's a bunch of other movies too, with Scooby and Doolittle and Little Shop of Horrors and all these kinds of other things. But yeah, so it's been kind of a wild journey. And of course, I work in publishing too. So Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering. Those are two favorite clients that I still work for. Animation has been something that I've been diving into a little more recently with Scoob. And then I was on a new series by Warner Brothers Animation for a new TV show, which I can't talk about, but that'll be really fun to see when it comes out. And of course, I've also been delving into virtual reality with a new company called Dreamscape and their title called Alien Zoo. So that has been a ton of fun. So it's gone from sort of like uncertain beginnings to a career that's been a lot of fun and very humbling and a good time. So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about some of my favorite projects and sort of the context of like how I handle creature design and what the tools and the principles that I hold in order to like make these animals feel like something that's real. And I thought I'd talk a little bit about that in case any of you are interested in it or would like to know more about that process and sort of share some of the projects that I've been on. So I guess, yeah, we'll just get started on that. But yeah, so one of the things that I look to first, obviously, when I'm designing a creature is nature. Nature is obviously like the best designer, and we should look to it often. The other principles that I hold dear are that form should follow function. You should always kind of think about like why you're putting something on your creature or character. And this doesn't even just go for creatures. This can go for, props or character design, or even when you're just working on like a beautiful illustration, like what are you putting into it? What is it saying? What's that shape that you're making? What is it? Like, why are you, what does it all mean? And that, every kind of decision we make will mean something. So it's really important to think about that. Color and silhouette do matter quite a bit in creature and character design, particularly for animation and film. So we got to think about that. And we always need to think about our audience also to make sure that they're going to be able to connect with the creature that we're designing. So let's start and talk about looking at nature and some of the principles and things that we can kind of discuss with hold on, I'm gonna actually pull this out so I can because I'm gonna ask some questions. I want to see if anyone answers them. Oh no, okay, cool. Okay, cool. So looking to nature. So again, nature, super great at creature design. If you look at, animals and plants and everything in between, everything on this planet is trying to figure out the problem of survival, right? With just its body. They don't really have cars and machines and stuff to help them. Some of them make tools, like rudimentary tools. But if you look at animals in particular, they are out there in the cold. I always look at seagulls in the ocean and how cold it is, and they're just out there with their bare legs, and I'm like, how are you doing this? This is insane. They're just out there figuring it out. And I think that what I really like about looking at animals in this way is that it's important to remember that they're always just making it, right? It's just enough to get ahead. So when we think about creatures that we're designing, we can look to the different adaptations and the different way that animals have evolved and have been shaped by moving around in their environment and being influenced by it. So probably it's kind of interesting because the biggest thing we should ask ourselves before looking at other animals and all of these, beautiful inspirations for our creature, the number one question you should ask itself is, where does it live? Where does your creature come from? So if you're gonna start designing a creature, think about where it's coming from, because I think it will ultimately help you decide the different kinds of shapes and things that you might need to consider for your design. So in particular, I'd like to kind of share these two animals here, which are both bovids, so they're related to cows. They're part of the cow family. And they are very, very different. And it has a lot to do with where they live. So the top animal, does anyone know what that animal is on the top? Anyone want to take a guess?
Buffalo?
Close.
Yak?
It is a yak, yeah. It's a muskox, or a muskox, yeah. So these animals live in a very, very cold environment. You could probably guess that because it has a lot of fur and a lot of, bulk, right? And they live where things are very, very icy and cold up in northern Canada. And you'll notice that in contrast, the creature on the bottom, the wildebeest, out on the savannas of Africa, has very, very short hair, right? And it has a much lighter build. So these two animals are responding to their environment and the other animals in their environment with very, very different adaptations, even though they're from the same family.
This animal on the bottom.
The animal on the bottom is called the wildebeest. They are responsible for Mufasa's death, if anyone has seen The Lion King. They were those animals in the stampede. So this animal is, again, really, really short hair. It's got long legs for getting away from predators. The horns on the top of its head are far away, right, from its head, because it helps with heat dissipation and keeping the animal cool. Whereas the big muskox on top has a lot of fur. It has thick legs because it's not having to run very fast from predators. And its horns are very close to its body to keep all that body heat in. So everything about these two animals are about the environment that it lives in, right? So when I was working on the work for Alien Zoo, that was something that I really thought about when we were talking about aliens or creatures from different worlds, and we wanted them to look like they were from a place. So this particular animal is called a rabuk, and it was something that I had to design, and it was going to be something that lived in a desert. So I wanted to make something that looked like maybe a camel or a kangaroo, or maybe a little bit of lizard with horny toe with some of the spikes on the side there. And we were heavily referencing Dougal Dixon's Afterman book, which is a great book. If any of you are interested in creature design or world building, check out this book, it's great. And we were particularly inspired, the director, Walter Parks, was particularly inspired by these creatures in the book called rabbits. And they were these future bunnies that become antelopes. And so we were trying to design an animal that looked similar to that, but felt more alien. So I was looking a lot at different animals that existed in desert climates, right? So you can definitely see where the swooping neck and the kind of like lanky build of this particular rabbit here looks a lot like the camel. And then the gait of the kangaroo with like the hopping technique and getting around was sort of what we ended up with for the final. So these sorts of cues can help us like understand what we want to make our creatures look like, and those animals heavily inspired me for this particular creature. Sometimes creature design isn't like making up a lot of animals and making up a lot of creatures and aliens. Sometimes creature design is just animal design, and a lot of creature design is animal design. Most movies or games or shows feature an animal. In fact, I would say that if any of you are interested in becoming an illustrator or a concept artist, learn how to draw a horse because you will draw so many horses in your career, because they're in every game you can think of. You probably ride a horse or something like a horse. So it's really important. But for the Scooby animation, or the feature film Scoob that came out last year, yeah, I think it was last year, featured a lot of real animals in the background and stuff. I don't know if any of them were on screen for very long, but I drew a lot of animals for that movie. And so a lot of that requires knowing a lot of animal anatomy and knowing how animals are put together and how they might stand, or what kind of personality traits you can pull out in a drawing, or like a cartoon character that you might not notice in like a real animal that you might want to accentuate in the drawing. And so that can be a ton of fun. And then sometimes you get put into a really nice sweet spot between creature design and animal drawing, where you get to design a prehistoric animal, right? Where you're designing an animal that did exist, but you kind of have to design it and make some of it up because it doesn't exist anymore. So you only really have bones to go off of. So being a paleo artist, someone who illustrates, dinosaurs and extinct animals, takes a lot of creature design skills, because you really have to kind of like put together your, creature anatomy brain to kind of envision the animal on top of that dinosaur skeleton, right? So a lot of the work I do also is prehistoric work for animations and games and stuff like that. So these are some Saber-Tooth Studies from Scoob. Again, there was a prehistoric world in that movie originally. I think they ended up taking some of it out. But so this is, again, just some really good example of production work and just kind of how messy it can be. This was sort of the like beginning stages of the saber-tooth cat drawings. And then we went into like a nice page of, different aspects of the anatomy and like what it could look like, and if you turned it around, what the paws would look like. And then this is something that's like a fur reference page that looks like a nightmare, but what it was I was designing like, I don't know, probably like 8 to 12 different characters for that movie for like, in the first like 3 months I was working on it. So it was a lot of work. So I would get to this point with the character, and then I would send this off to a keyframe painter, and they would paint this drawing to make it look beautiful like it was in the movie, and using all this reference that I'd give them. So it was a nice team effort. I wish I had the painting of this in the end, but I don't, sadly. And then of course my animal anatomy skills and looking to nature and using nature as reference comes in really big handy when I'm working with animators on animated characters like Scooby-Doo. And the, the way that these cartoon characters might be put together. I typically do give anatomy reference for my clients, just because I find that it helps the animator kind of know where joints and all of these sorts of things are. For rigging and animation, but sometimes there's not enough time. But if I have time, I'll do it, because I find that it's really helpful. So this is what Scooby looks like with some muscle. Of course, the classic Scooby poses. Oh, yeah, and so these are the some of the explorations that I did for Scooby. And of course, like kind of showing like what his skull might look like was always a lot of fun too. So, and then something that's again, like looking to nature is really important, because particularly like in the case of Scooby, looking at dogs and how they might emote, how they might look when they're scared or happy or that kind of thing. They don't necessarily make these like humanoid expressions, but there are things that you add to like your animated character drawings to kind of help push that a bit. So, with like Scooby's ears looking kind of like down here and there, or his eyebrows kind of furrowed, that kind of thing, or his snarling that's coming up on this angry drawing here. You might see that in like a dog, but you might not see it from, a human when they snarl. I mean, sometimes people snarl, I guess, but not so commonly. So again, using these dog reference is really important for this particular project. And I probably drew like, I don't even know, like, oh my gosh, oh no, here we go. Okay, I probably drew like, I don't know, 1 million pages of Scooby expressions. It was pretty crazy. 1 second, I need to like get this to zoom out again. Sorry about that. There we go. Okay. Cool. So sometimes, what you draw is, or what you get asked to draw isn't necessarily like belonging to an environment, but a place. In particular, the character that I made for Sorry to Bother You was a mutant horseman who was transformed from a man from Oakland. And director Boots Riley asked me to make sure that there was a Raiders tattoo somewhere on him, because he was a fan of the Raiders in the movie, or he wanted the character to have some kind of link to it. And so these little signifiers on characters can really help sell a place or an identity. So even if your character isn't from like, the jungle, maybe they're from like, or like, the mountains or something. Maybe they're from hell, or like some other place that's like kind of not like real, or like, or is like this, like, oh, there's another plane and it's like a plane of light, or, fire or whatever. You can pull stuff from nature or from the world around us to kind of help it make that character feel like it's from that place.
What you're up to? Playing your game? Building your house?
I'm sorry?
I think that was just a random blip.
Oh, I love it. Cool. So anyway, yeah, so that was a really fun character to work on. So again, looking to nature, super important. So our next principle that I'd like to share is form should follow function, but both should always serve the story. So that means like anytime you design a creature, you should have a reason as to why it has things like spikes or horns or whatever. There should be a good explanation for that, but it should also make sure, or you should also make sure that it serves the story and the audience in the way that it's supposed to. So I do a lot of work on Dungeons and Dragons still. I work a lot of, for their monster manuals and stuff. I'm an illustrator for them, but I also do some concept work on the back end. And I was one of the principal concept artists on the 5th edition monster manual back in 2013, which is crazy to think about. That was kind of a long time ago. But the one of the creatures that we needed to redesign was called a Carrion Crawler. And this is the original illustration of that animal, or that monster, I should say, from back in the 70s. And it's this like big, horrible worm with tentacles on its face, and it climbs through caves and it eats a bunch of dead things. And that's the monster, and it's really scary. And so the art director asked me to redesign it and to come up with something that felt a little scarier. So I took it into kind of like a really creepy direction, and tried to pull from a lot of different horrible, creepy creatures. So if you're squeamish about spiders or anything, please look away from the screen. I'm sorry, but I'm going to show you the reference. So this was what I was looking at for the Carrion Crawler. In particular, the sulfugate here, which is a camel spider. These particular spiders I actually would encounter myself in my bathtub when I was a kid. It was kind of scary. Oh no, why did it zoom in? I'm so sorry, that's terrible. Oh God, I didn't mean to do that. Oh geez. So yeah, so anyway, these were some of the animals I was looking at for that particular creature. And you can see that, using the like grub and the maggot and the vampire squid kind of helped inspire this sort of look of the creature here. So as I submitted that creature, my art director, okay, it's all gone. If you're looking away, it's gone. It won't come back. My art director gave me the reference again and was like, hey, I really appreciate you exploring the way we thought we wanted to go a little wild with this, but we think we've talked it over and we all agree that we want to keep the Carrion Crawler of looking like itself. So that way, you know, people recognize it a little more. So looking at lampreys and some of the other original creatures that the original artist had looked at, I kept the Carrion Crawler a little closer to the original design. I still wanted to honor some of that like horrible maggot fleshiness in the body, and play with some of the function, particularly in the mouth, to make sure that if someone wanted to get nerdy about how the Carrion Crawler worked, that there would be really cool notes involved, like, oh, you know, the like jaws snap backward and it can just kind of like scrape its body across the carrion or whatever it finds. And, you know, it's got these like big eyes that kind of look around its whole head so it can see around its whole environment while it's eating and that kind of thing. So there were some really fun facts that I was working on with this creature. And what was really fun was I got to illustrate this creature for the manual. So I really got to get into some of the like nitty gritty bits of the mouth and what it would look like and how it worked, and trying to kind of take apart that just the standard lamprey mouth. I wanted it to sort of have its own unique look. So I was really excited to illustrate this creature for the manual too. So that's sort of a good example, I think, about how, you know, we want things to function as a creature designer, but it should also make sure that it serves the story and actually answers the assignment. Because sometimes, you know, even though I went with such a bizarre kind of look in the beginning, it didn't really look like the Carrion Crawler. We needed to bring it back to that retro feel. So we wanted to make sure it had that same look. So silhouettes, focal points, and signifiers are super important in creature design. They can help us kind of immediately know what this character is going to be about. And sometimes it can lead you off course. So, you know, this little creature here, even, you know, he looks like a cute little guy. Maybe he's like pretty friendly. He could be completely evil, but maybe you didn't know that looking at him. It could be kind of fun that way. So it's important to kind of think about how silhouette and these different bits will help your audience perceive a character. So when I was working on Men in Black, the hero character for that movie starts off with a like a small alien baby, and it needed to feel rather helpless, and it needed to be really cute. And so when I first started on this creature, this is actually where I began. It's on the poster you guys made for me, which was really beautiful, by the way. That was a really nice poster. But the this little guy was the initial sort of design that we all liked and the director liked. But as we worked on this creature and this character, it kind of came to light that they looked a little too capable, right? Like they look a little too like strong, right? And in the beginning of the movie, this creature's kind of supposed to feel helpless and like small, like a baby. And this has like muscles and stuff. It kind of looks like it could totally tear up your house and fend for itself. So it was something really important to think about, like, you know, what is that? What kind of signifies that? Well, like the size of the head, you know, the head's really big and the body's kind of little. It's got big eyes and a big round face, and everything looks super cuddly and fluffy and adorable. So this creature feels like something that's kind of helpless and like you might want to protect. Whereas this creature has sharper edges and like a, you know, more athletic, muscular build. It feels like it could be an adolescent, like maybe it's a toddler, but it's a very strong toddler. So, you know, you don't want to, this isn't going to communicate the same kind of character. I think that Pokemon are actually a really good example of this. If you're interested in character design, their silhouettes are really important to players. And I think that, you know, in particular, Pikachu, I think is a really good like study in shape design and what he means. Like, what does Pikachu mean? But like, he's like really round. He's got big, beautiful eyes that you want to like stare into forever, and you want to cuddle him because he looks super soft and cuddly. But then you're also kind of given a clue with his tail. He's got this kind of like lightning shaped tail. And so it's sort of this like interesting signifier that lets you know that this character is literally going to shock you. But he's also cute and cuddly and trustworthy and all these kinds of things. So again, something to think about, like when you're, you know, designing creatures, is thinking about signifiers from real animals, right? So when you think of a lion, or when you see a lion, what is the first thing you notice about this lion? If you were to like tell me one thing that you think that you see in this image about this lion.
His mane is the most striking. thing.
Like what's the? Yeah, absolutely. The mane. Like if you were to say like, oh, draw me a lion, you'd probably draw mane, right? Big head. Yeah, the mane is prominent. I'm seeing the chat. Nice job. Maybe some teeth, right? And like big claws. You know, maybe even the like little poofy ball at the end of the tail here, this little poof, right? So these kinds of signifiers are really important for us as character designers because it means that our character will be memorable. So if I were to ask you to draw a lion from memory, or even ask a child to draw a lion from memory, they would, this is just clip art, but they would probably draw a mane, right? And or a this little poof ball at the end, maybe some ears and some big paws, that kind of thing, right? So these signifiers help us remember the symbol of a lion because we can't remember all the little tiny details that is a lion, right? I can see the chat, sorry everyone. I am looking just in case because I know that it can be hard to like speak up. So if you want to answer a question, you absolutely can use the chat and I'll try to acknowledge it. Yes. Thanks. We appreciate it. And then, yeah, so these little signifiers can help us kind of identify animals, right? Because the world is in high definition and it's hard to remember everything. So these things help us. Like if we were to think about a giraffe, what are like the top 3 things, or what's one thing you would think about when you think about a giraffe? Anyone?
Long neck.
Yeah, there you go. Long neck and the spots. Perfect. Yes, that's like exactly it, right? So if you wanted to draw a creature that reminded people of a giraffe, you might start with a long neck and spots, and then you could add whatever else you wanted it to, but people would be like, oh, it kind of looks like a giraffe. And you can use that as a tool to make them know like, hey, this creature is going to be similar to a giraffe. Like you don't need to run because it's not going to hurt you, because giraffes might hurt you. I wouldn't go near a giraffe, but you know. So when I was working on these aliens here, I was looking at a lot of different animals that live in trees, and particularly a couple different animals. Does anyone want to take a guess what animals I was looking at while I was designing these creatures? I always like to do this just to see.
It's a sloth.
Sloth, bat. Ooh, nice. Monkeys, very good. Yes, sloths, monkeys, absolutely.
Lemur.
Lemur. Okay, yeah, 100% with some of the feet there. Awesome. Great. And yes, thank you, Megan. I appreciate you doing that. But yeah, sloths, I was looking to sloths, monkeys, orangutans in particular with all that fur that hangs down, lemurs, all kinds of things. And then, you know, of course, like mantises and kind of crazy bugs and stuff, just to sort of give it that like alien vibe. So that way it doesn't feel too terrestrial. I wanted it to kind of have that kind of creepy look. But it helps kind of tell the viewer, like when you look at this character, you might think, oh, it climbs trees. It might be a little bit slow because it kind of reminds me of a sloth, and it might be social, or maybe they care for their young like an orangutan. Like that's just kind of going through everyone's subconscious, right? So you can use that as a creature designer, as a character designer to kind of help guide your audience. And in that case, it's really important to remember to like think about your audience and how they're going to experience your creature and what it might mean to them. So when I was on Alien Zoo, one of the creatures that we had to design was this thing called we ended up calling it a trunk horse because it had a trunk and it looked like a horse, but it was, all the code names in production are really cool and advanced. I'm just kidding. But the whole idea behind this animal was that you could feed it. So in this VR experience, you're in this like headset and you can walk around like freely. You're not in a chair or on a platform or anything. You're on like a sound stage and you interact with like these like puppets that like come out of the walls that are like all gray and stuff, but you touch them and they feel like weird aliens, but in the VR it looks like a whole creature. So it's really neat. And one of the encounters is feeding this animal. So we wanted it to feel like you could approach it. So drawing something that looked really alien or like a spider or had this like, you know, too outlandish would be really scary for people like who were just the general public walking into this thing, or like 10-year-olds who were allowed to go into this thing. So it's like one of those things you really have to think about. So in my exploration, things got kind of crazy with like creepy seagull mouths and like sharp claws and all kinds of stuff. And it started to get a little bit scary. Plus it's huge, like this is the size of an adult. So they were really big in the beginning. And we kind of ended up toning her down to make her feel a little more approachable and friendly by rounding some of the shapes, keeping some of the like, you know, proportions more terrestrial like. We wanted her to feel like a horse, maybe a camel or a llama, but nothing that was going to be like scary. You know, the tusks ended up being taken out because those were also like, oh, we don't want people to feel nervous about tusks. So it was really important to make sure that this creature felt approachable and that it wasn't going to hurt you. So I actually have a video of it. Let me see if I can find it. It doesn't open in the slideshow. Here we are. Sorry, I think I closed that window. Okay, here we go. And here is our final trunk horse and what she looks like in the experience. She still has her sharp dew claws, but she's much more friendly looking in the face, and she's not nearly as like fuzzy or hairy or like creepy looking in the face. She's a lot cuter, and she makes like cute little squeaking noises. She's a little smaller too. She's about the size of a zebra. I mean, zebras are still big. I don't know if you've ever been near one, but they're like a little shorter than a horse. And so she is a really neat creature to actually get to like touch and interact with and all that. So, but again, it was really important for us to think about the viewers that were actually going to go into this VR world, because most folks know what a horse is, and a lot of people have actually had experience in touching horses once in their lifetime, or something like a horse, maybe a goat or something. And so that was a really accessible animal that we could kind of model this creature off of to make people feel comfortable. Whereas, you know, some of the other animals that you encounter that might feel more odd, and they're not nearly as recognizable. So it's really important, again, to think about how your audience will perceive your character. But that is essentially some of the principles that I follow when I make creatures and characters in my work. I hope that that's helpful to all of you, or interesting, or that you find some inspiration in using some of those principles and in your own work, and whether it's creatures or characters or world building or whatever that might be. But and I hope that my journey from being like, you know, newly graduated to doing what I am now was hopefully inspiring to you as well.
You make all your work?
Sorry?
Do you make your artwork?
Yes. I make all of this work. I use a variety of different tools. So I use pencil and Photoshop. I also use the iPad and Procreate. And that's how I make my work. So yeah. Does anyone have any questions or comments or any questions about anything?
So Brynn, do you get a script or a treatment prior to your brainstorming about the creatures you're going to create?
Yes, I do. It kind of depends. So I'll give you a few examples. With Ghostbusters, I was given a script that they were working on, and there was also even some storyboards done. So I was able to watch those animatics and kind of see where the character would fit into the scene. Other times, like with Men in Black, did I get a script for Men in Black? I don't think I got a script for Men in Black. They just gave me like a quick synopsis of what I was going to be working on. They were like, there's an alien baby, and like this person's trying to like protect it. Here's the adult and what they look like. You know, try to make a baby version. We want something similar, blah blah blah. And then sometimes I don't get a script or anything, but they just kind of want me to go wild, or they'll be like, hey, we're designing for this kind of world. You know, can you make what you think is going to be there? Like with Little Shop of Horrors, that's a remake that's kind of in the works. When I was on that there was no script really or anything for that yet, so it was sort of just like make what you think. So I hope that answers your question. It's kind of a variety, but I typically do get a good sense of direction. It's pretty rare that I get to go wild, but it does happen. So any other questions?
Renee Kavanaugh says, what's the best way to get your work out there?
Oh, great question. So there's a number of different ways. I would say probably, probably the best way is social media. Having a website. You can get a variety of different websites for free. I know that ArtStation is one that you can, I'll type that into the chat in case you don't know about it. It's a good place to upload work. You can have a profile, you can like share your experience, have a resume, that kind of thing. And you can usually make like a free gallery page that everybody can access and it looks really pro. That's a good way to get out there. Of course, you know, Instagram, Twitter, all those kinds of places are good to be on just to converse with other artists. I typically upload, I kind of like re-upload a lot of the same work to those websites because I don't really like the pressure of making something new for them because like they're not paying me. So I just will be like, hey, here's a new thing. But then in the, you know, for like the next 2 or 3 weeks, I'll usually reblog stuff that I've already shared because a lot of my new followers haven't seen it and I'm still excited about the work that I did make. So I'll post it. And then, you know, events, I think once the world kind of hopefully goes back to somewhat normal, conventions are a really great place to go. I know that Lightbox Expo, if any of you are interested in animation or gosh, anything to do with art, Lightbox Expo was online last year and it was a huge success. There were so many awesome lectures and demos and all kinds of stuff that you could access online. It's probably going to be online again this year just because it was such a hit last year. So check that out. And that was a really good way to share work. And then of course, like, you know, sending your work to clients if you are interested in a job or a company. Usually they have some kind of drop page or, you know, inbox or something that you can send your work to that is really helpful for getting jobs that way and getting hired. So that's a good way to do it. And of course, I guess the last thing, sorry, this is a big answer, is talking to other artists. A lot of the work that I've gotten in my own career has been because artists have passed on my work to clients that they know, or sometimes they're too busy to take it on themselves. So they'll be like, hey, I know a person, she's great, she can totally do this. And that's honestly how I've gotten the majority of the work that I have gotten recently has been through recommendation from different artists and different people that I know. And I do the same. It's really rewarding to get to recommend someone for a job. It's probably one of the best feelings ever. So be friends with other artists because it can be really beneficial. And you also never know, they might be an art director one day too, which is, you know, always a possibility and they could hire you. So good thing to do. I hope that answers your question. It's a great question. Any others?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hello?
Yes.
How often do you draw, like on your own?
On my own? Gosh, well, let's see. It kind of depends on the week. Yeah, if I'm having, I'll say this, if I'm having a good week, then probably like once a day. You know, I'll usually doodle a thing or I'll paint on something. I have a lot of like paintings and illustrations that I'm currently working on that I'm just kind of always working on. that was a weird sentence, but you know, I can kind of like noodle away on stuff. If I'm really busy and working for like a client or something, it can be harder to fit in personal work. Like when I was on Ghostbusters, I didn't really draw for myself through a lot of that project, which was fine. But sometimes it's kind of more fun to work on your own stuff than it is to work on client stuff. Sometimes it's more fun to work on client stuff than your own stuff. But I would say like, if I were to give you an average, probably like 3 or 4 days a week, I draw. And the other times I'm working on things that are art career related, like admin stuff or shipping orders or, you know, doing the kinds of like odd jobs that you have to do when you own your own business to, you know, actually make the money, I guess. So that's a great question. It's kind of hard because I wish I could be like, I draw every day, but I definitely don't. Thanks for asking.
Can
Kenny May in the chat asks, how do you manage your time for your various projects? What's your schedule like, and or do you use some sort of timeline?
Oh, cool. Great question, Candy. Thank you. Yeah, so I use a variety of different things to help me out. I do use my calendar on my computer to kind of help me with scheduling like big deadlines. So I'll usually be like, you know, this project's due now here, and then there's like an alert so I can like see it every time I open my phone. I also have this like bullet journal back here. Oh my God. Oh no. Oh. Okay. And this is like not very exciting. I'll go back a little bit because some of the other pages, this one looks actually kind of exciting. But like I usually have like tasks I need to get done through the day. I'll have like a note section of like what happened that day. That day I found tapioca pearls in my pantry. For some reason I wanted to write about that. I found boba. It was pretty awesome. So I'll write like stuff I need to do, and sometimes I'll move it over. You know, and whatnot. I like to add like fun stickers and stuff, but it kind of helps me keep like a little list next to. Oh, cool. Oh, I'm seeing the chat now. Bullet journal fans, nice. Yeah.
I do it too.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, it's really helpful to like do that. And mine's pretty simple. It's not. There are some really beautiful ones out there, but this is just what works. And I've kept them now. I just packed them up. Actually, I just put them in a box, but otherwise I'd show you. But I've had bullet journals now since 2017, and it's really rewarding to look back and see all those journals and like what you were worried about and what you were working on and that kind of thing. Because like it's really kind of fun to see that. So I like this system because I also like the act of like crossing off something on my list, and I'll usually write like funny things to like try to get through my day, because sometimes you don't want to start or you're having trouble starting. So sometimes I'll be like, you know, make sure you, I don't know, make the bed or something that's like kind of not like art related, just so that way I feel accomplished. Like, yeah, I did emails, sure. And then I feel like I can get started. And that's really fun. So that helps me. My calendar helps me. Sometimes I use Post-it notes on my Cintiq here. If I have like a note from a client, like this is one that I need to redo some stuff on an alien that I'm designing. And that's like there for me, so I just see it immediately so I can like get to it. So I use kind of a number of different things to help me out. And then I do have a schedule during my day. I typically because I work from home, I typically start work between 9 and 10 a.m. and I usually end around 6 or 7. So it's about I keep pretty normal business hours. Some artists I know work later, like my friend Mike, who I think you all got to enjoy his talk at some point. He works a little later into the night than I do. And some folks I know, like my friend Robert, gets up at like 4 a.m. and works really early. So it kind of depends. I'm most productive in the middle of the day, so I keep pretty normal business hours and I try to adhere to them. I take weekends now. I didn't always, but it's really important to do that. So make sure you take breaks. And I try to keep the same schedule pretty much every day. One thing I noticed that my husband struggled with, because he was working in an office and then he became remote during the pandemic, was the like separation between life and work. And I noticed that he would eat lunch at his desk. So I'd have to kind of tell him like, you need to come eat lunch like away from work so you can like have a minute. So if you find yourself working from home, make sure you take breaks away from your work, because it's really important for your mental health. So I hope that answers that question. Ooh, I think I'm looking at the chat now. Are these more questions? What kind of brushes do you use in Procreate? Ooh, good question. I have some favorite brushes that I'll show you. Whoa, sorry. I use pretty much exclusively, which you all probably know about all this, but I use these brushes for Procreate actually exclusively. I don't know that I think I use the default 6B brush in Procreate a lot for my like.
Brynn, are you sharing a Procreate screen or something? Because we're seeing the same art.
Oh no, I just hold on one second. I'm gonna actually exit out of this and then I'll show you these here. Sorry, I was just gonna pull this down. Can you see this okay?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yay. So I use Max Packs brushes. These are great because they just have a really like natural painterly feel. And I just love the way they react. This isn't an ad. I don't get money from Max or anything, but I love his brushes. He just really makes super great stuff that looks really natural and just has some I don't know, beautiful results. I also like them because they're very reasonable in price. Like this watercolor pack is 25. He has a couple packs on like Gumroad and stuff that are like sampler packs that are like $5 or $10 or something. I think the painter's pack is $8. Oh yeah, this one's $8. And I love them. This one's $2. The essential pack is $2. That's not bad. So try these out because they're just so nice, and they are, I don't know. I really like, I don't actually use anything else except for these ones. I think there's maybe one brush that I downloaded from somewhere that I use here and there that's not his, but yeah, I'm totally a Max Packs fan. Oh my gosh, that's a great question. I hope that helped. Joseph, thank you. And Hasib? Oh wait, no, sorry. And there's another, no, I'm sorry, Justin asked that. And Joseph asks, have you ever experienced creative blockage, and do you have helpful method to overcome that mindset? Absolutely. Everyone, I think every artist has some kind of mental block when they're making work. I definitely have myself. I think that some of the ways that I've gotten through it is, at least in my own experience, and every artist has a different technique in getting through it. So you should try and use what works for you. But the thing that I found that works for me, or a couple things, are sometimes I'll change my medium. Like if I'm working on a painting or something and it's just not coming together, sometimes I will switch to like a different kind of pen, or I'll switch to a completely different kind of medium and I'll do some writing about it, or I will sculpt, or design something. Like sometimes I'll design, like maybe I'm working on a book, like I'm working on a book right now. And sometimes if the paintings aren't really going well, I'll just switch to designing the book, and that's super fun. And then my brain kind of becomes unblocked that way. Sometimes I'll draw something that I know how to draw already and just kind of draw it over and over. So if I'm like, again, struggling with something, I'll be like, you know what, I just need to warm up. And then I'll draw like, studies of different animals or creatures that like, I've been thinking about for a while, or even just like do a study of something from a photograph, just so that way I can like get the muscle memory going. And then other times it can really help me to just like get away from art. If I have the ability to go for a walk or a hike, one of my hobbies is hiking and camping. So I do a lot of that to make sure that my brain is happy. And I really don't like leaving my house, but I find that if I do and go for that, I am much happier, and I'm able to, I don't know, I guess function a little better. The hike and the walk usually really helps me out. But even just like sitting outside or getting away from the usual like place that you're in can really help with that. If it's maybe watching a good movie that you like, or reading a book, or listening to a book or a podcast, or talking with a friend on the phone. Sometimes that's really nice. Actually, I talk to Mike often on the phone, and we talk about this a lot. So it's nice to kind of talk to somebody else about it too. So those are some techniques that I use for it. I hope that helps a bit. It's a good question. Hasib? Sorry, go ahead. No, please.
Hasib asks, did you ever face any sort of judgment for pursuing concept art for fantasy animals, especially when you were younger? And hoping it's not too much of a personal question, asking artists out there who get criticized for not looking for the real job, quote unquote, things.
Yeah. Great question. Thank you, Megan. I appreciate it. Great question, Hasib. I think that, yeah, actually, I'll be honest, I was really fortunate to have a family that was very supportive of my career. My dad wanted to be a concept artist also, but became an aerospace engineer. So I don't know. but he was really big into fantasy and just, he's a giant nerd. So he was like, yeah, go for it. I think that there's definitely been some rocky moments between us because I think that, you know, art school isn't cheap, and he, you know, I think that my family, or my parents, I should say, you know, did what they could to help me out and were endlessly supportive. But I know that it's also like a little scary, I think, to send your kid off into a market that's a little bit like, it's very competitive and like, you know, kind of a stretch that you're going to work for anything like this. So it was, you know, I know that it can be scary. I definitely did get judgment from like fellow students and teachers that I was in college, especially fellow students. Actually, a lot of them were kind of like, that's super stupid, but it was a different time. And and it was okay. It was fine. I think that it kind of made me want to do it more because I was like, I'm going to prove you wrong and I can do this. And like, I'm going to figure it out. And that was really nice. So in a way, the spite fueled me a little bit. But it was, I would say that I was really, or I guess I've always been the kind of person who really tries hard to surround myself with people that celebrate each other. And I think that that's where like having a community of friends who are also artists is really important. You know, where you have people who are rooting for you, it can be really empowering to have that. And, you know, and it's not too much to ask. You can find friends and other artists who are excited for you. And it's always good to do that because it's really hard out there alone. And it's good to have people who are on your side. And it's never going to be worth it to give people time who are taking from you like that, or who are discouraging you. So it's good to have people who will be honest with you. Of course, there's a difference between being honest and being discouraging. They can be constructive, but people who tear you down, you know, try to keep them out of your life, because it can be really hard. And I've definitely had friends that like kind of turned into that, but it's okay, you know. And I think that it's a learning process, and we're all trying to make it, and we all have insecurities, and so sometimes it comes from a place of insecurity. So I hope that answers your question. It's not personal at all. I think it's a good question, and I'm glad you asked it.
Can I interrupt with a follow-up question?
Sure.
Speaking of judgment from teachers and fellow students, you mentioned early on in your talk that concept art wasn't really a thing that was taught in schools when you were going to school. So then you studied illustration.
Yeah.
I was just curious if you could talk a little bit about the difference between, you know, illustration as you learned it, as the school was teaching it and expecting the students to be doing afterwards, and what you're doing now, what you thought you're going to be doing, how that might be different, what your expectations were in school and where you ended up now, and all the things in between.
Oh, wow. That's a great question. Yeah, I think that, gosh, it's funny because like my illustration teachers in my program were very supportive of me, even though they had no idea what it was I wanted to do. I was like, yeah, I want to be a concept artist. And they're like, we don't know what that is, but we're here for you. Like, you can do it. And so it was kind of funny. And then like the school itself, like the school around my program was like, you're ridiculous. We don't know what you are, but fine, whatever. So that was kind of an interesting dynamic. But when I was in school, I really wanted to do concept art for movies. And I got to do that pretty early on, but I didn't actually get back into film until like 5 years later. So I hit it big with Luc Besson in 2011. And then I got no other movies until like 2014. Yeah, or maybe 2015, I think. So it was like 4 years. And I was just like, oh, well, I guess I'm never going to work in movies again. It was my one shot. And so I guess that was the one thing I did. And that felt really kind of discouraging at first. But then I got to work in publishing, and I got to work for Dungeons and Dragons and games and virtual reality and all these other places where I kind of didn't have my sights on, but that needed someone like me. So I was able to work on that, and that taught me so much. And I was so excited because it's interesting, because CCA actually taught me how to be a publishing illustrator. Like I learned how to work with a book client and like a magazine client and those kinds of clients in school. And that was kind of what I ended up doing for a while because, you know, I had the experience in doing that. But then I started working more in film animation, and now I'm kind of doing that mostly. But I've never let go of my publishing clients either. I really do like working for them, and I love publishing. I love bookmaking, and I think that that's actually where I'm headed more now. It's kind of funny because I think that you know, I started out wanting to work for movies, and I was working in publishing, and now that I'm working for movies, I want to go back to publishing because I really like that, and I love working in film. I'll do it as long as they'll have me. But I really do like the art of bookmaking and storytelling in that format. I think it's really an interesting space. I hope that answers your question a little bit, but yeah, it's, your goals change. And I think it's like really rewarding and humbling to kind of have that move around for yourself as an artist, because it means you're growing. You know, if I think I got to a point where I was like, oh, all I want to do is work on D&D. Like that would be so cool if I could just do one thing for D&D. And then I did, and I was like, okay, what now? Like, what's going to happen now? And then you got to find the next thing. And it's like, you know, it's really important to have those kind of next steps, because at some point you'll do it, and then what? You know, that's the next question, is like, what's after that? So it's kind of this eternal pursuit, which is exciting.
That's a great answer.
So,
I'm gonna
good,
take my teacher's privilege and jump on the jump to the front of the line really quick with another follow-up question. Somewhat related still, which is why, but you mentioned in part of your deck too, working for virtual reality, and certainly you talked about publishing, about movies, and then of course video games, and now VR. And these are sort of the industries that didn't exist back then. And so could you talk a little bit about how you can sort of leverage your existing knowledge and move it on to the next big thing, and you know, sort of be on the forefront of all the cool, exciting things that are coming up?
Yeah, totally. I think that you know, in my own work and what the kind of work that I typically do speaks to a lot of these types of media, because more and more media is becoming more and more immersive. People are wanting to go to a place and kind of experience another reality. And I think that so much of what I was trying to do, especially with Dungeons and Dragons and all the work that I gave to them, I was really pushing hard to get them to write more lore and show more lore and show creatures doing things other than like roaring. I kind of wanted to give them like a field guide in a way. And so I was really pushing for this, and like they didn't take it. But well, I shouldn't say they didn't take it, because they did take pieces of it for 5th edition, but that's okay. It was great, and it was really exciting and fun to work on, because what I got from that was that, you know, Alien Zoo and some of these VR projects were like, wait, you can write all this, you can world build, like you can make stuff up. Like, that's great, we need that. And so it's kind of like this nice way to be like, yeah, here's all of the work I did on this. No one asked me to write like about how this creature from Dungeons and Dragons, like, you know, thinks about, like, what it thinks about when it's not hunting adventurers, or like what its favorite color is or whatever. But like, you know, it's there, and now a new client can see it and be like, oh dang, like, you know, she can totally make more than just a drawing. Like, there's a whole world behind it. And I also carried that over, not just from VR, but into Ghostbusters, and working on Ghostbusters and all of that, and trying to make characters and creatures and ghosts that have like a story and fit into that franchise, and trying to make it feel like it's part of that world. So I think, like, you know, even though what I was doing at the time wasn't actually needed, I kept practicing it anyway. So I think that it's kind of about conviction in a way, where it's like, if you are working as an artist on something and you really believe in what you're making, keep doing it, because I think that someone will find it and want it and notice it and you know, pay you for it, or lift it up, or share it, or, you know, whatever it is you want them to do. it can be really beneficial to have that kind of in your back pocket. So I hope that answers that question. It's a good question. It's hard to know, like, yeah, of course, it's hard to know like what's going to be next. And I never thought that I would be doing what I'm doing now. Like right now I'm working again with the same VR company, but I'm consulting and I'm writing with Walter Parks. And he's like, you know, he wrote like war games and all this stuff. Like he's a Hollywood guy. And it's cool to like get to do that because I never thought I would do that, but we get to work together and that's really interesting. And I never, like college Brynn would have never thought that that was something that she could do. But it's worked. And I think it's just because I just kind of stuck with it and was like, this is what I do and I'm not going to change. So I'm just going to keep doing it until someone hires me. I'm really stubborn and almost to a problem. It's kind of a problem sometimes, but in this way it served me a bit. So that was a very long answer. I hope that wasn't too much of a rant.
That was great. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. And then, oh wait, sorry.
I was just going to mention in the chat, there's also a question from Sonia Jackson on, has there ever been other animals that you've noticed you reference and draw a lot other than horses?
Oh yeah. You know, it's so funny because I started out drawing so many cats as a kid, and I think that cats is one of those things that I really look to quite a bit in a lot of creature work that I do. Definitely do a lot of ungulate, kind of big elephant, like hippo shapes. I really love like chunky animals that are like hefty. I love big cats, you know, that kind of thing. I love like weird primates also. I think that they're super interesting. So I think there's a lot of feline and like ungulate territory in my work. Sometimes I'll go weird and find something that's really bizarre and kind of have some fun with that. Or even like these little dudes down here. But the yeah, I think like big cats, chunky boys, like big hippo creatures. I love hippos. Love hippos like so much. And I love elephants. I love camels a lot. And oh, I love goats. Goats are like my favorite animal. Oh my God. Yeah, so I hope that answers that question. I just love all the animals all the time. They're all great. So
Yeah.
and you have
There's also another one from Joseph.
Oh, okay.
He says, sometimes people get too obsessed with finishing a certain work and they will keep working on it, believing it is not finished. This prevents you from moving on to something else. Ever experienced this while working?
Yep, 100%. Actually, this piece here, this weird little creepy goat man, was a piece that I started in like 2014, and I sketched a bunch on him, and then I didn't like it, so I just kind of like threw it into a folder on my computer, and I didn't think about it. And then I thought about it again in 2020, and I was like, I should finish that with like the powers I have now, because I couldn't have done it. I couldn't have made this painting in 2014. It just wouldn't have happened. And so then I did it, and that was really nice. There's other times where there are paintings that I revisit here and there, and then I just kind of am like, you know what, this isn't what I need to do. Like, this isn't interesting. Like even this painting started out as like something that was very similar to one I'd done before, and I was like, oh, I guess it's kind of fine that it looks the same. But then I ended up taking a walk, and walking around Los Angeles in the springtime, all of the jasmine starts to bloom everywhere. And there was this parking sign that was like completely covered in jasmine. And I just thought it was so funny because you couldn't see the parking sign. So I snapped a photo of it. And then like a few months later, I revisited that little dragon piece of these two dragons hanging out in a jasmine bush. And I was like, you know what, it'd actually be kind of funny if it was like in a parking sign, like that parking sign I saw. So it's kind of this nice, like, oh, you know, sometimes when you leave a painting alone and then go out into the world, you might see something that'll inspire it to be a better painting. So you can use that, or if you leave it all together, sometimes it's better just to leave it alone, because there's definitely a few pieces, especially in like my Procreate folders and all my other folders on my computer, that I just like, I like them and they're cool sketches or they're cool starts, but I'm just never gonna pick it up again, and it's fine. Like, it might become an idea later, but I think that's why it's really important to like have sketches that you don't really show anyone, because it kind of takes away some of that like pressure. And I always feel the pressure, like, oh, I should post this on social media or whatever. But then I kind of stopped doing that, and now I just share all of my sketches with my patrons, because it's a little more like intimate, and I don't know, I don't feel like it's like broadcasting to the world like the weird experiments that I'm trying out, but I want to share with people like some of the experiments I'm trying out if they're interested in it. So I guess that's one way I've handled it. But I hope that answers your question, Joseph. That was a good question. Sometimes it's worth it to put down the painting and just to let it go. And other times it might not be the last time you put it down. Sometimes you'll put it down and you'll pick it back up again a few years later, and it might be cool. Renee, oh, I see the chat here. Can I see here? Do you have any advice for people who want to get into character design or concept art? Yes, draw often, because that is like your number one tool. And draw from life. I think that's such a like, I don't know, I feel like that's something that you hear everybody say, but it is actually very important to draw from life. As a creature artist, I draw a lot of animals, or when I was able to go to the zoo, I would draw a lot of animals from life there. And that absolutely informs a lot of the like posing that I work with, and like design ideas and stuff like that, because it, you can kind of see those animals like moving around in real life and stuff. So that really helps. I think, if you're interested in character design in particular, like go out to a cafe and and draw the people you see, making caricatures or studies of people that you see is really fun, in public places or online or whatever, because it can really help kind of flex those character design skills. And I think having your, fundamentals in place, studying anatomy, very important, making sure that you look at those resources to help you out. And not just anatomy books, but also like places where that might help you with that. Like one way I learned with human anatomy was actually anime, because it kind of like broke it down in a very simplified form. And it was like an artist was seeing the human body for me, so I could just kind of access it, because seeing a human body in real life was hard for me to translate. So it was kind of nice to see it through a cartoon. And I still feel like that's actually how I got a really good handle on animal anatomy, was drawing Disney cartoons. And most of those cartoons are like really anatomically correct. So it really helped. So draw a lot, study anatomy, watch a lot of cartoons and movies. That's really important, because you're going to see a lot of that work. Art of books are really great to get, because they will kind of give you some insight as to what kind of work artists are making for studios, especially some of the recent ones. And you can kind of see what people are working on. So I hope that helps a bit, Renee. Hasib asks, is Procreate your primary software? It is for sketching. I love sketching in Procreate. It's super natural. It's like chill. I just wish that like if there was an iPad that was, you're welcome, that was that drafting table was an iPad, that I could get like an artboard that was enormous that had Procreate on it, would just be amazing. But that doesn't exist, so that's okay. But I like using my iPad, and then I will use Photoshop for client work. I use it a lot for like big projects, because sometimes I need the power behind it. But I've done finished work on the iPad too. I did some Dungeons and Dragons stuff on there last year. I've done, whatever. The only thing that I have trouble with on the iPad is the ergonomics. My posture isn't as great as it should be, especially going through 2020 and not being able to like keep up with fitness and all that. I am finding that I'm more comfortable working on the Cintiq right now because of my shoulders. So I work a lot on the Cintiq these days, just to preserve my body. So I don't become like, bleh, because it hurts to work on the iPad because my neck gets all strained. Anyway, it's a lot of information. Sorry, but yeah, that's a good question. Loved the joke, Peter. I can actually tell animals to stay still. They stay still for me. They don't stay still for other people. Anything I would do differently if I restarted my journey? That's a great question. Zion, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's awesome. I would have taken better care of myself in the beginning. I like completely like did not keep up with like my mental health or my nutrition or anything, and I definitely suffered for it. I had to rebuild myself as a person. So try really hard to make sure you take breaks and make sure you keep friendships alive, that kind of thing. It's so important because I really was so focused on getting jobs and, you know, being the best and all this stuff that I was like just a shell of a person at the end of it. So I think it would have taken me a little longer to get in, maybe, but at what cost? You know, I think it's really important to have a work-life balance, and in the beginning I definitely did not. So highly encourage you to take care of yourself, and also again reach out to people, because I think in the beginning I was really I guess like, I don't want to say shy. I was just kind of like freaked out about being friends with other artists for some reason. I don't know. I was like, I don't know about this. And then I found a lot of joy and fulfillment in being friends with artists, being close friends with artists, and lifting them up and celebrating their work and being excited for other people. That's been so great. And I highly encourage doing that. So I hope that answers that question. It's a great question.
I'm going to jump the line again really quick.
Yeah.
You speak a little bit more about the work-life balance thing, because I think in a lot of industries, including, you know, the creative industry in general, there's this idea that's kind of hammered to people that are starting out over and over again, that you have to like work harder than the next person, you have to want it more than the next person, and I personally don't necessarily want to pass that on in my teachings, but it's this idea that permeates like over and over again. You hear it all the time. And when Mike was speaking to us last time as a guest speaker, he talked about burnout a little bit. So just very broadly about work-life balance, workload, burnout. If you can just talk about that in general a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in the beginning, I would pretty much take every job I could, just because I felt like if I didn't, they weren't going to call back. And it was like kind of silly, but I was like, they're not going to call me again if I say no. And it's like, no, it's not. Like, maybe if you say no like 5 or 10 times in a row, they might be like, well, she's just not interested in working with us anymore. But like once or twice isn't going to matter. And you can word it in a way that's like, hey, I don't have time right now, but I'd love to work with you on the next one. Hit me up. And then that's all you need to say. But I had this thing in my head where I was like, if I don't say yes to every job, like I'm never going to get another job again. And it's a terrible way to think, because I would take on too many jobs. Like I would have, you know, like 5 or 6 things I needed to turn in, you know, all in 3 weeks. And that's horrible. And what sucked about that, or what was terrible about that, was the work wasn't that great, because I couldn't spend time on it. You know, it was like, oh, well, I'm spread so thin that I have to like only give each job now, you know, a couple hours or something. And now I have to, you know, kind of go halfway on everything, and it's not even what I wanted it to look like. So in the end, you kind of shoot yourself in the foot a bit. So for the sake of the work, if you're interested in making good work, it's a good thing to make sure that you load yourself with the correct amount of work, and that comes through experience. I think that
is this an example of bad work.
I'm sorry?
Is this an example of bad work you're showing right now?
Yes, yeah, totally. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just kind of like cycling through work. I guess I could like
I didn't want to say anything.
No, I'm just like, here's some interesting things to look at. But like, yeah, I think that it's important to like make sure that that your workload is something that you're actually comfortable with. And I think that, again, that takes experience, because in the beginning I was like, yeah, I can take on like 8 jobs. And it's like, I can't really actually, then everything looks like horrible, and I have no life, and I don't have time to eat or do anything. So now I'm like, okay, 3 jobs is about what I can handle. And if there's a job that comes for me after that, I pass it along to the next artist, because I need to make sure that I preserve my sanity and my ability to make good work. Is the whole thing too. You don't want to take on too much, because then the work's going to suffer. And I think, like, the work-life balance is important. I used to get like so upset about going places and taking time off, because I felt like, well, I could be working, I could be getting better, I could be all this horrible toxic ideas, but I never actually made anything. Like, I would sit there on my computer and be like, oh, like I'm gonna work on stuff, I'm not gonna go out and see friends, that's silly. And then I wouldn't make anything. And then I was just like lonely and sad and didn't actually do anything. And so it was kind of a bummer. And now I feel like, it's like, oh yeah, no, I have, like, after 7 o'clock, I'm done working, and I can go out and hang out with friends and see people and do what I need to do. And that in itself is an act of, caring for yourself and caring for your friends, and also inspiring yourself, because then you get to see different people, you get to be in a different place. Or, right now with all the COVID stuff, you get to, like, be on your front steps or something, or see your neighbors, or take a walk, or whatever it is that you get to do. And that's still important and really nice for your brain, because you just don't get any sort of input, and then you just start to spiral down. I know it, I've been there, it's not good. But yeah, I hope that kind of helps a bit in terms of, like, the work-life thing, because it's a lot of people talk about it, and and I'm not going to say that I don't have moments where I have to pull 14-hour days, because those do happen, but I'm more set up to handle those 14-hour days because I understand how to care for myself better now. So when I have those days, I make sure that I have, like, something to eat in my fridge. Like, I know that I'm not going to cook anything because I don't have time, but I know that there's, like, something that's nutritionally okay for me to consume for lunch, and that I can take, like, an hour break for lunch. It's fine. Nobody's going to come after me. And, like, I know that I can fit in a quick walk, or even yoga, or just something, or video games, or something that's to, like, help my mental health. Because it's important to know that. And I have a lot of trouble with perceiving time. Like, time is it's like really hard for me to understand sometimes. But like, if I have, like, a meeting or something, it's at 4 p.m. I don't have time, and it's 10 a.m. and I'm like, I don't know where the day is. I have, like, 6 hours. But it's really important to kind of set yourself up for success. So you learn that, and it comes through experience, and it's not going to be perfect, and that's okay. I think that's the biggest thing too, is, like, you're not going to do it right every time. And there are going to be times where you mess up, and maybe you have too much work, or maybe you don't have enough work, or you said no at the wrong time, or you said yes and you shouldn't have, and all that. It happens, and it's totally fine. I think the biggest thing is to just stay steady and understand that it's a marathon, and it's not a sprint. You have to kind of just take it one step at a time is the biggest thing. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful for everybody here too. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, of course.
There's also a couple of questions from Joseph Peralta and I may mess up the name, Prazana something. Shuri, yeah, Shuri. But yeah, they ask, let's see, where did it go? They ask, what's your favorite software? And for finished work, is the best feedback to know a piece is complete from the opinion of others, or do you trust your own judgment to know your work is ready? From those 2 questions.
Great. Good questions. So my favorite software is, I love Procreate. I love, well, I like Photoshop. I don't love Photoshop, but I do use Photoshop quite a bit. I mean, Photoshop has some really great stuff. I just wish the only thing I have beef with is the smudge tool. I just want the smudge tool to act like the Procreate smudge tool is all I want. That's all I want. And I think there's actually only two I use. I'm not super cool and advanced or anything. I do like working in ZBrush, and the few times I've gotten to do that, I really like that program a lot. This is my only example of a 3D model I have on my portfolio. I have others that nobody needs to see that I'm experimenting with, but that's what I do. That's super fun. I like other materials I use. I really like pencil. I love gouache. I also really like markers, and I like pen and ink. So nice question. Thank you for that. And the next question, about finished work. So how do I know if a piece is complete? It kind of depends. I will sometimes know, and it's usually because I can't think of anything else to do on it. So sometimes I'll get to a point where I'm just like, I don't know what else to do. And then I'm like, well, it must be done because I can't think of anything else. Other times it's like, yeah, okay, that's done because it looks good and I know it's done. And there are definitely times where it's just because that's when the deadline happened and it has to be done. Like if it's for clients, it's like, okay, well, I don't have any more time, so it's done. So it's a variety of things. I also, speaking of like working with people you trust, I'm part of a few Discord groups that I frequent with other artists, and we will sometimes share work to like get feedback and critique on, and that has helped me immensely in my work. Like I feel like, my teachers in school were pivotal in getting me to a point where I could jump the gap from being a student to a professional. As a professional, I feel like my peers have pushed me in a way that is I couldn't have done myself. So I think that having a group of friends or people that you trust that you like to show stuff, even if it's like an instructor that you still talk to. I still get, as an instructor myself, I still get students who send me work, and I'll give them a little bit of feedback here and there if they want it. And that's really nice. But that's super cool. So I think that it is, it's a combination of both. And I think that sometimes things don't feel as finished, but it's kind of just a good place to leave them. It's kind of a good place to just leave them. Like, I think like this kind of work where it's kind of sketchy and like sort of messy in some places isn't typically how I work. I'm very technical in a lot of my drawings, like things are very like detailed and stuff. But then sometimes I like to be a little looser and sort of have this kind of like spontaneous look. And it might not feel finished to me, but I'm like, I know I can just leave this and it works. And it's kind of this experiment. You're always kind of trying to find that line. So I hope that answers your question. It's kind of a really weird answer for you, but I hope it's helpful. It's a good one. Cool.
I don't have much else questions in the chat, so I don't know if that's that or not.
Yeah,
Okay,
guys.
cool.
We're
Thank you,
very
Megan.
lucky to have Brynn here, so you should definitely take this opportunity. We don't want to keep everybody too long, and I hope you're okay on time, Brynn.
Oh yeah, I'm good. I'm good until 6, so.
Okay, so last chances, guys.
Got 10 more minutes.
Ooh, what music is in the creature zone?
Oh, there we
Sorry, I just
go.
saw that. I was excited. Actually, that's a good question.
Brynn, what's your favorite type of creature?
My favorite type of creature? Okay, I'll answer both of these questions. So music, it's actually kind of funny because sometimes I make playlists to help me with jobs because I have to like be in the mood. And so it's like, usually when I'm working on a job, if I'm just painting and I don't like if I'm working on Dungeons and Dragons stuff and I don't have to like think about what I'm drawing because I've already done the sketch and I'm just finalizing it and making it look pretty, I'll listen to a podcast or something. Like, I really like this podcast called Desert Oracle. It's like a weird, creepy podcast about the desert and all the cryptids that live in it. I like, well, not cryptids, but like aliens, I guess. It's super weird and creepy. I like podcasts about history and design, and a podcast called Criminal that's really good, and science and stuff like that. So that's cool. When I was working on this TV show, that I can't really talk about, I made a playlist that was like mostly the How to Train Your Dragon soundtrack because it totally got me there and where I needed to be. And I just jammed on that for like 3 weeks. That was cool. Sometimes I listen to like just stuff that might have like the same vibe. So like if it's like kind of alien space feeling, I'll listen to like, you know, creepy, like, I don't know, soundtrack music. A lot of times scores or like lo-fi beats. I listen to a lot of lo-fi like hip hop stuff or like that. Well, not hip hop. Well, I guess it's hip hop, like lo-fi easy beats because it's just chill. And I usually play it. I play it like out in the studio, like or in the office because I share an office with my husband. He sits like on the desk behind this. So that music is like it's not. There's not a lot of lyrics or anything. It's just like cool beats. So it's like, that's nice for the two of us because he can work and do that. It's totally a vibe and it helps a lot. So I like that. But if I need to be like zoned out and just paint, I'll listen to a podcast or a book or an audiobook. I love doing audiobooks. Or I'll make a playlist that gets me there. And that oddly enough was How to Train Your Dragon for like the month of March was what got me through that job. I needed something that was like adventure and like, you know, kind of Celtic, and it was there. Good question. And then someone asked me what my favorite kind of creature is. So it's funny because I think some of I guess I can answer that with like a couple of different movies that I really enjoyed the creature design in. And oddly enough, I think this answer is always a little bit of a surprise to people. I really, really like Tremors. And I think that creature design is really, really good because I think that everything about the design of the Graboid points to the fact of like what it does as a character. And I just think it's really funny. That's such a good creature design to me. I also really appreciate the stuff. I actually recently watched Troll Hunter, and I really, really liked that movie too. Because I feel like the trolls had such a scary vibe to them. They were so weird looking and so interesting. I love the Xenomorph because it's pretty classic, and I grew up watching that. I love the Tauntaun from Star Wars. It's such a fun creature. I think it's just so cute and silly, and all the creatures in Star Wars are kind of silly, and I like that. Like it's kind of retro. I also really liked the creatures in Arrival because I felt like they were really outside of the box. They were like weird squid aliens that talked with ink, which I thought was really neat. Because you don't normally see a lot of that. Oh wait, I'm looking at the chat here. Okay, hold on. If you're talking about the main theme song from How to Train Your Dragon, yes, it is a mood buster, and you totally get me. Thank you, Hasib. I'm glad we're on the same team. Sonia loves these movies. And Predator Alien, Shri asks, yeah, I think that, gosh, I don't know. I like both of them. So I guess I would probably, oh man. Maybe Predator, maybe Alien. I don't know. Alien, sure. Because I think if I were to watch a movie right now, like either one of those movies, I would watch the original Alien, 100%. Like it's one of my top 5 movies. But yeah, that's a good question. Have I ever drawn any critter from folklore? Yes, I have. I don't know that I can find any, like just on my website. I don't think I have them. I mean, I draw a lot of dragons, of course, but they're not really like typical dragons. They're like derpy dragons because I like kind of breaking that apart and making stuff that seems silly. But the Jersey Devil is kind of a cryptid. Maybe that's a little bit of folklore. It's some like weird, I think that's like Appalachian folklore, like cryptid territory. Definitely done some stuff for clients, like Dungeons and Dragons has a lot of folklore creatures, obviously, and Paizo with like Pathfinder and stuff like that. I've done a lot of those illustrations. So I actually really like doing folklore critters because they have kind of it's a challenge to try to make something feel new but familiar. And folklore is a really good place to do that because you want people to recognize what it is. Like, oh yeah, that's the Jersey Devil. But then, you know, you also want to kind of give it a new spin and not make it typical. So good question, Catherine. Any other questions? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
There was also that question a while ago asking about what your favorite animal is, your favorite creature.
Oh, my favorite creature or animal. So my favorite animal, goats, 100%. I'm a big goat fan. Particularly Nubian goats and Spanish goats. Those are my jam. I really like camels, and I really like jumping spiders right now. It's a weird combination of animals, but jumping spiders are my jam right now. They're so cute.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think I listed some of my favorite creatures, but I think that those are my favorite animals for sure.
And Candy May also asks dressing the creatures, pets, like how you've outfitted the paper dolls. Like,
oh, that'd be funny. Like putting like different clothes on creatures and stuff. That could be cool. That's actually something I always push for when I'm designing aliens in movies. Is I try to clothe them, because I feel like so often like an alien will show up and they're just like completely naked, and it's like they're from outer space. Like, wouldn't they have like a suit or something? Like, it's just kind of weird that they just don't have any clothes on and they're like spacefaring. And like, I feel like we are spacefaring and we put a whole suit on to get out there. So, anyway, that was a giant rant. I'm sorry, but yeah, no, that would be super fun to do, like a creature pet out, like paper doll situation. That would be super fun.
So I had one question, but now I have two.
Okay.
So I'll ask the sillier one first. So would you ever design, I'm just gonna call it like the Donald Duck type creature where you're like wearing a shirt but no bottom, or like the chipmunks where you know,
oh yeah,
they're like half dressed, so something is kind of odd. And
Yeah.
then the more serious question is, I know you specialize in creature design, and concept art is a really broad category. So I was wondering if you could just really quickly, I know you're we're short on time, I don't want to keep you, but just very quickly for everybody's benefit, to break down what you see as the broader sort of categories of different types of concept artists might be, if people want to specialize in different types of work.
Totally. That's a great question. So to answer the silly question, I actually don't know if I have done anything like that before. I'm trying to think. I think some of the aliens that I might have designed for Valerian had clothing that wasn't really like the way we would wear clothing, but I just kind of would write, I kind of wrote that like they didn't need clothing on certain parts of their bodies, because like where we would perceive like genitals on them was just not, it wasn't like where we would think it would be. So it was like up here somewhere. So they had clothes that covered that, which I think is kind of funny. But like, you know, there's stuff like that, but I don't know that I've ever done like a chipmunk or Donald Duck sort of situation, but I don't see why not. I think it'd be kind of funny or fun. And you know, like I'm down. And then I think the other question about concept art, gosh, it's pretty interesting, because I think that like there are concept artists who are definitely generalists who can draw you anything, and they're extremely valuable because they are, you know, they can do anything. So they're good to, that's a good concept artist to be. Most concept artists, I would say, can do most of anything, but usually specialize in like something. So like, for instance, there are concept artists that specialize in environments or keyframe painting, where it's like, here is a scene from the movie, and the figures and like vehicles and stuff might be less developed, but the environment itself is really highly developed and looks like a movie still. Or sometimes there are people who design props, and they can literally draw you any sort of object you could think of in any sort of direction or whatever you want. And that's a whole job itself, is props, like, you know, staffs or knives or boxes or, you know, guns or toys or whatever else you need in a film or a game or an animation. There's people who do character. Typically creature work falls under the character category. I would say a lot of character artists get asked to do creatures. So it is pretty rare to be like a creature specialist. I'll say that. I definitely don't get as many jobs as other artists might or do. And I'll be the first to admit that one, that I do get passed up quite a bit just because I am so specialized. However, I typically, when I am brought on for a project, I'm typically the like lead for that project. So it's more worth it to me at this point anyway. What else? I mean, there's concept artists who do design that are like logo design and like world building stuff. Like, oh, we need like logos back here in the background and ads and like, the soda in this world needs to be designed. There's a concept artist that does that. Like, there's just people, artists and all kinds of stuff who do that kind of thing. So I think it's important to know what your strengths are. I knew early on that I was really good at drawing animals. So this is something that this is kind of the only thing I'm good at. Like, I can do other stuff, but this is kind of it. So I really leaned heavily into that because it was a way for me to enter the industry and give them something that I knew that I could produce well and that I had like a different take on. And I think that, every artist has like a specialized or a specialty or something that they're obsessed with, that they keep drawing over and over, and you can see it in their work. So I hope that answers that question, but there's a lot of different ways this can go. I think the best thing to do, like if you're lost on like what to do or like what you want to do, is to find what's the thing you draw like while you're just doodling and like not thinking, like while you're talking on the phone or watching a show or something. Like, what is it that you just go to every time? And I find that that's sometimes can really help with like where you might have like a spark. Like I typically will draw some sort of weird animal or alien or something while I'm talking on the phone, and so I've just always stuck with that because it's the thing that makes me most happy. So
Thank you so much for that answer.
Thank you, Brynn.
yeah, you're welcome. Yay. So cool. Well, thank you so much for having me. This was such a lovely discussion, and the time flew by, and it was just you all asked excellent questions, and it was really nice to hang out with you all this evening. So thanks for having me on.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for coming, Brynn. And
Thanks,
thank you
Yeah.
everyone for joining us.
Cool.
Hey.
All right. Well, I guess that's it. So you all take care, and yeah, and also if you share the YouTube video, shoot me a link so I can promote
Absolutely
it if you
will
want it
do
promoted. Okay, cool.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you all. Oh, thank you so much in the chat, everybody. Appreciate it. All right, everyone. Have a good week.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
You're welcome.